Proposal PA 18-0012.
Thank you, Chair. Get the PowerPoint up. You're familiar with the GPIP process now. If anyone wants to propose a future general plan amendment, they come through the GPIP process. That's what this is tonight. This particular request will be reviewed by the council next month. Mr. Hornstein has submitted a pre-app as part of our GPIP process. He would like to change the general plan land use designation from its existing of commercial retail to highest density residential, which is our HHR designation. If a formal project is submitted, it would also require a change of zone from RR to R3, partial merger most likely, and then a plot plan, then either an EIR or an MND, just depending on the project. The idea is to do the land use change to accommodate a 4-story, 94-unit apartment project on 3.82 acres. That comes out to a density of about 24 acres, or 24 units to the acre. That's why the HHDR land use designation is being requested. So this gives you context, an aerial photo. The star is where the sites are. There's about 3 or 4, I think 4 parcels that make up this 3.8 acres. You have the shops at Clinton Keep just to the north, Wildomar Square, which actually has buildings on it now, it's not vacant. Kitty Corner to this, and then you see that jurisdictional riverine area that runs through the north side of this site as well as the south side of Wildomar Square. This gives you the existing general plan and zoning. You can see the amount of commercial retail that we have there with some MDR to the south. And then again, the site is on rural residential, so that would have to be changed to R3. This gives you kind of an expanded view looking out further. You can see the yellow square and the blue arrow, that's where the site is. So you can see the CPS zoning to the north and to the east. C1CP to the west, RR kind of to the west and south, and then that subdivision, R1 subdivision there along Palomar. This gives you the land use designations from an expanded view. See the different retail, the medium density residential, which is R1. So this is a preliminary site plan. This is just something that the applicant wanted us to put in there just for concept related to the general plan amendment. We haven't looked at this. There's no open space, there's no recreational amenity, there's no pool, no spa. So obviously any kind of development plan would have to go through the full development review process. These are the architectural conceptual design that Mr. Hornstein would like to place there. Again, we haven't seen any of these. This is just a schematic that he provided. In terms of the GPA discussion, considerations are the loss of retail land use opportunities and sales tax revenue converting from commercial retail to highest density residential, the loss of potential jobs from the retail, land use compatibility with high density apartments adjacent to single family residential and residences, the development of 94 apartment units that would be added to the current stock that we have that's been approved but not yet built of 1,245 units. I think I've mentioned that to you before with the previous GPIP that we had on pre-lip. A request came in from a business park designation to apartments as well, and I showed you that graphic that had all the apartments by the hospital out to Elizabeth Lane and so on. So we have that many units, apartments and condos that just haven't been built yet, but have been improved. And then there's obviously potential traffic impacts that would have to be mitigated, as well as environmental impacts. So our recommendation tonight really is for the commission to receive public testimony from the applicant. He does have a PowerPoint presentation that he'll provide for you. And then take testimony from the public, discuss some land use and planning issues related to the GPA, and forward your comments to the City Council for review and consideration at their April 11th, 2018 meeting. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. All right, so that moves to the applicant.
There we go. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Nice to see you. Hey, John. Thank you for your time. I guess I'll have someone just keep flipping that for me. Is that's you? Thank you. First, I want to give a lot of work credit to Matt and Alfredo as they put this together and carefully kind of made me aware of general impacts to Wildomar, as you know. I do want to say, as at the end, I was going to say, please come to my famous shameless plug to come to Wildomar Square on March 24th. We are finally having the grand opening, and so we're excited. 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and the city's obviously invited and should have already received that, but it's for the public as well. This is, I've been involved in, and I know, John, I think you know this for years, in understanding the landscape of Wildomar as it relates to retail. And so one of the things we had considered about 10, 15 years ago was, are we over-retailed, are we not? Should we stick with the general plan before the city became a city? And one of those roundtable discussions was to really better understand what's reasonable and real based on our ultimate build out of 50,000, I think is what it was, and what's attainable, and then what's kind of a wish list just for our numbers and whatnot. And we came up with a few sectors and kind of what we have today. A lot of what we did when we became a city was that we adopted the general plan, as you know, and we didn't get too specific as to which areas that were still fell under CPS or any type of retail commercial zoning to get rid of or not, and we were just going to see as it comes basis. We know there's a need. We know there's a lot of multifamily that's been approved, and I'd like to kind of take you over kind of where we are. As you know, we developed the shops at Clinton Keith, and with Regency Centers, we did the Stater Brothers Center, and then we did the Palomar Rite Aid Center, and now we're just completing Wildomar Square. And our bigger use, which wasn't really to be discussed yet today, but just so you know, was to actually do 94 units as well as work towards a civic center in that area. So a lot of our planning for Hidden Springs, the 5 lanes, etc., dual signals and so forth was with that intention. Because we're just coming in for a zone consistency or zone change per se in a discussion, we decided to just focus our project on just the 94 acres, but I did leave one screen for you to see the entire project, which would include something that we're not discussing today, which would include a civic center. So having said that, we go to the next. So Solar Village, obviously we want to do something green. We would like to not only green, but take into consideration a lot of the environmental savings we could from solar panels, also water and so forth, but we're calling it Solar Village. It's for everyone, not just a particular group of people. Will be a complex that will service the underserved community of Wildomar. We know that there's hospitals looking to expand here. We're looking for new hospitals that are medical centers that are planning to come out here, and a lot of these people do need apartments and people to actually provide the apartments as well. Providing mid-level priced apartments, it'll satisfy growing business community, college community, which we are anticipating. As I mentioned, medical community that's currently in process, and not everyone obviously can afford houses. So we're not looking for really higher end per se in terms of cost, but certainly to satisfy what we need out here. It'll also service the existing retail. So a lot of the retailers will be able to have employees and continue to thrive and not have empty vacancies. Affordability, as I mentioned, is limited. Other multifamilies have been approved, don't seem to have started, but they have been approved in the city. We know that that's sensitive. Solar Village will take advantage of the newest updated solar panel package, water efficiency uses, which will be considered environmentally positive and leading the way of effective water use and power. We'll show you some examples of some of our solar panels as well shortly. It will also have a beneficial park and ride. I know that's needed. One discussion was there was no place for a park and ride out here, but it'd be great off of the freeway and to go off of Hidden Springs to ultimately create a scenario where we can do a drop-off and then ultimately come back with a proposal to perhaps get a bond to build out stable lanes all the way through back to Clinton Keith. So you can imagine someone coming into Hidden Springs, going all the way down, parking, maybe there's that civic center, whether they're working there or just commuting, and then they'll be able to actually leave from there off of Stable Lanes back to Clinton Key. The project will have architecture that will be compliant with the adjacent commercial projects across the street by the I-15, which, like I said, will be known as the Civic Center. In keeping with the theme of, I think Gary had mentioned, and a few of us have mentioned, you know, a Wilshire corridor, if you will, what we'd like to see within the area, according to most of us, we will be set off the freeway, and obviously not impacting other commercial demand that the city has in its general plan. Having basically leased 30 to 40% of Wildomar's retail over the past 20 years, we feel we have a good pulse on the true demand of retail, and we were very grateful actually that the city, and I don't know if some of you guys came, but certainly you guys are aware of the decreasing retail demand due to Amazon and technology, and it's more service and restaurant based, and that's what's heading. So we're at a very good place for retail. Obviously there's still some more retail to be developed, but we don't feel...
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Could you just clarify Wilshire corridor, because that's not a term that
Yeah,
I'm familiar with.
I took that from Gary, the city manager, who said that the big vision that the Wildomar had would be where Clinton Keith would be one of the main thoroughfares, not too densely populated per se, but certainly the main thoroughfare as far as commerce, commercial, retail, and so he likened it to a Wilshire corridor, Wilshire being a street in Los Angeles that he kind of envisioned. So I'm just feeding off of that vision.
Okay,
What
thank
David
you.
really means is, we refer to Clinton Keith, that stretch as our miracle mile,
Okay.
how we treat it and the high quality that we want to see.
I grew up in Northern California,
you.
so Wilshire is
Thank
not
you. I'm
part
sorry.
of my stomping
Yes,
ground. So thank you
Miracle
for
Miracle
clarifying.
Mile, I apologize, which encompasses Wilshire, so thank you, Matt. Okay, so where were we? Yes, so if you can go to the next slide. So currently, as you know, we don't have the demand I just mentioned. The face of retail's been changing, and most people are looking for service and food. Built associated 75% of the retail projects. I think we shouldn't necessarily be concerned with losing projected sales from something that we don't believe is too realistic based on our current growth and where we're heading. Meaning, I don't think we're losing retailers if we went through with this project based on the demand and what we see. And we're also looking for our project to include some retail as well, which you'll see in the Civic Center component. Wildomarians will continue to face general plan and land use designations that need to be adjusted so that our planning and our cities align with the demand of the city and its vision. We can use a civic center, obviously, and a Wildomar proven development group, hopefully, right, who can move forward with a high quality project that can service our citizens and be a catalyst for responsible growth within our community. And we believe Solar Village provides that opportunity, and I do appreciate your time and consideration. I know there's a couple more slides, Matt, if you wanted to show them, you're welcome to, but I'm definitely open to any questions. So the yellow right there would be the 94 units, the blue would be the Civic Center component, and it sits right in front of the 165 acres of that belongs currently still to Robin Oxman. So all of that obviously will still stay commercial most likely, and perhaps industrial when that uses come up. If you want to show a potential site plan, I think the next slide, a couple more slides down, a couple more, and those would be examples of the type of solar panels that we would have on each of those three buildings. This is the overall larger development, which again we wanted to stay away from since we're just specifically discussing the 94 units, but that would include obviously the green area, which would be designated to fishing game and so forth. There'd be discussions for that and maintained, and then perhaps government buildings, a gym, restaurant, medical office building, and ultimately what we really would like to have here, which would be more of an upscale suite type hotel. Good for the city, the community, and why those tax dollars would be very beneficial for us in the city of Wildomar.
Thank you very much. very much.
Yeah.
Any questions for the applicant before we sit down? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'll start. Yeah, I've seen Mr. Hornstein's project before. He does very good work. I'm not concerned with that at all. I believe he has a good vision for our community as far as retail locations and layouts and such. For this specific one, I have more concerns because I don't see a need for additional apartments at this point. Oh, do we have speaker slips?
Yes, we do.
Let me switch gears.
So, Mr. Kenny Mays.
Sorry, Kenny, didn't mean to butt in.
It's okay. We should all have concerns about this project. A miracle mile, come on, in rural Wildomar? Consolidating 4 parcels into one will deprive Measure Z parcel tax of $84 in revenue a year, while adding a potential 430 new residents. Those same potential 430 residents will have to figure out how to squeeze into 192 parking spaces, as 49 of the 241 are park and ride spaces. Those same 430 potential residents will have to navigate Hidden Springs as the only way out of this complex, as Stable Lane currently does not go through to anywhere. These apartments are currently in a very high fire hazard severity zone, and yet there's no mention of this in a staff report or by the developer, nor mention of how it's going to be mitigated. These are also 4-story units. Does our fire department have the necessary number of extension ladders and the room on our one truck to carry them to reach the top of these units, as we have no hook and ladder vehicle, or do we have to place, nor do we have a place to park one if we should acquire one? Or are we going to rely on mutual aid and have another contracted station assist should a fire break out in these units? Lastly, will the developer be able to pay his impact fees, which includes nothing for the library? Or is this city going to set up another workaround in the form of a mellow ruse for apartment complexes, like we did for retail developments? Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers?
Kathleen Hamlin.
Hi. Sounded like the developer had our city all buttoned up and sewn up and, you know, looking like Santa Monica or something, which I think is outrageous. I am firmly opposed to amending the general plan land use map from commercial retail to highest density residential for a 4-story apartment project with 94 units on 3.82 acres. This is clearly another horrible, scaled-down Camellia townhouse project. We are a small, semi-rural city, and it needs to be preserved and to stay that way. Why do you people insist on proposing highest and high-density residential developments here? The residents have expressed their views time and time again about the negative effects of apartments, condos, and townhouses in Wildomar. These kind of development proposals are outrageously out of proportion and do not belong in Wildomar. I am opposed to any zone changes or amendments to the general plan that will destroy our rural community and lifestyle. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional speakers?
Joseph Moravito.
Good evening. I had some notes prepared, but after seeing the presentation, it's a little bit different than I've seen. But on that, let's just go over the basics. So 94 units, 4 stories, under 4 acres, CR to HHDR, Wildomar. As far as, but there's, like, I share your opinion, Chair, with the developments made by the developer. that they're nice and all that, but with this one in the apartments, I'm not so sure. Part of me thinks part of it would be the art of the deal. You come in with something that's just like, will trigger people into panicking, and then you come back with, maybe 2 stories and 40 units. It is only 4 acres. I don't know. I don't know what's possible. But if it was it's near the Oxman properties. I didn't realize that that part was not part of the Oxman properties, on the other side of the road. But if it was part of a larger plan, if it wasn't just a standalone development, the apartments by themselves, if it was part of a larger master planned area, then maybe apartments would make sense. But the way it stands now, I'm not sure how that works.
Thank you.
That is all I have, Chair.
All right. And I will open again for discussion. Okay,
Hopefully you can finish your thoughts.
All right. Yeah, the concept of needing additional apartments, I just don't personally see it. We have already converted an awful lot of property over to apartment properties. Even though they have not been built currently, we have, I believe, sufficient enough to support our city in apartments already. And we still have additional properties that are designated for high-density building that haven't come before us. So I personally just don't see supporting that.
At this time, I don't feel like I know enough about it to stand one way or the other on it. I know that high-density property always strikes a chord, and you're either on one side or the other with it. I personally lived in apartments. They're right behind this building when I first moved to Wildomar, and that was a very pleasant place for me and my family. So they're not all bad, but we want to make sure it's done right.
I'll throw in my 2 cents. It is commercial. We greatly stand by our general plan, a general plan amendment. We've had other developers come and ask for other properties to make that change. And I would probably say to you also that if you consider something like first floor, commercial, and second and maybe third floor, like townhouses above commercial, that might be a possibility, something like Little House on the Prairie. But to go straight up from commercial to a high density, it's going to be, it's obviously the city council's decision, but I don't think it really fits our flavor. And then looking at the images of the proposed apartments, we're definitely leaning more towards Sycamore Academy's style, towards the barn at Palomar and Clinton Keith, into something that's even though it's not as rural as we would like it to be, we still want to retain that flavor. And so something that's really, maybe something in a little industrial rural might pass, but looks very contemporary. And we do appreciate that it is solar. Definitely water efficient is very important in California overall. But to make it considered, there's got to be a commercial aspect to it, whether it's a creative. We don't have a creative kind of commercial area where there's room for artists, for galleries, for people to do art and have that outlet. That's something that I don't see happening yet in Wildomar that could make it very attractive. So, people that have their studio downstairs on the first floor inviting people in, and galleries downstairs inviting people in, and then upstairs living would be very appealing. So, those are my thoughts, and we'd love to hear from some other commissioners.
John, I agree with you 100%. I don't think the city needs more apartments. Again, it is the city council's approval on this, but I do think we need to continue with our general plan. I also am concerned about the financial impact and the impacts that Mr. Massey brought up, that it would have to the city. The traffic is a concern, parking is a concern, and I don't think we have enough commercial and tax dollars coming into the city. And I think we have too many apartments.
It's hard to run a city as a bedroom city, unfortunately, so I always hesitate when we look at these changes from commercial use. And I really do, I agree. I think we have enough apartment projects on the books already that it's a hard sell.
And we, yes.
John, I just want to make a quick clarification just for the record. The GPIP process is in no way a decision to support or deny the proposal that is before you. This is a preliminary process to get feedback on these issues. When we go to council in April, it'll be the same thing. The council will hear the community input, to hear the applicant input. We will convey all your concerns to the council, then they'll basically provide that input, whether they have concerns, support or not support for the project. But we're nowhere near any kind of approval, so I don't want people to think that tonight, moving this on, you're approving a project, because you're not. It hasn't even come close to going through the full development review process, so I just want to clarify that.
Thank you very much. I believe we provided discussion and comment.